With the retail release of Lorcana just a few days away, I thought it would be good to go through how to play Disney Lorcana. In Disney Lorcana, you are an Illumineer wielding your magic ink to summon Disney characters and items in a race to locate 20 pieces of lore before your opponent. Some card abilities will give you lore, but the main way to earn lore is to send your Disney characters on quests. In this video, we will go over the different types of cards in Lorcana, the different parts of each card, the deck construction rules, and then how your turn will go and the actions you can take on your turn. There are three different types of cards in Lorcana. There are characters, which you can send on quests or into challenges. There are items, which give you special abilities and stay on the board. And then there are actions, which give you a one-time use of an ability. Action cards also have a subtype listed as songs. Songs are a type of action that is one time, but you have the ability to sing the song without paying its cost if you have a character in play that can sing it for you. Now let's go over the different parts of a Lorcana card. The top left of each card is the card's cost, which in Lorcana is referred to as ink. The number inside the hexagon is the ink required to play that card. Outside the hexagon, some cards have the Inkwell icon, showing that that card can be placed in your Inkwell during your turn to use for other card costs. We'll get into this in more detail in another section. Next, you have the card name, and characters will have a version name below. We'll get into deck creation and why this version name matters in the next section. Next, you have classifications. For items and actions, this will just list the card type and include song if the action card is a song. But for characters, these classifications are things that can be referenced in card rules, such as broom in this example. To the left of the classification is the ink colors, which again, when we get to deck creation, we will explain why this is important. Below that is the card's abilities and effects. This section will list the card's special rules if it has any. There are a few extra parts on a character card, the first two being the character's strength and willpower. You can think of this like their attack and their defense. Strength is how much damage the character deals during a challenge, and willpower is how much damage it takes to banish the character from play. Finally, on the bottom right is the lore value of the card. This tells you how much lore you gain when this character quests. Now on to deck construction. Each Lorcana deck must have at least 60 cards in it. Your deck cannot contain more than 4 copies of a single card. This is where the character version mentioned earlier is important. The 4 copies limit is for the version, not the overall character. So for example, you can have 4 Elsa Queen Regent and 4 Elsa Snow Queen in your deck. Finally, your deck can only be made up of cards from 2 ink colors. In Lorcana, there are 6 different ink colors: amber, amethyst, emerald, ruby, sapphire, and steel, and you can only use cards from 2 of those colors in your deck. If you want some information on what each color does best, please check out my previous video on ink colors in the card, and it's linked in the description. Once you've created your deck, it is time to play a game of Lorcana. You will shuffle your deck and then draw 7 cards. In Lorcana, each player has the option to mulligan any number of cards in their starting hand. To do this, beginning with the player who is going first, they will put any number of cards from their hand onto the bottom of their deck without revealing them. Then they will draw cards until their hand has 7 cards again. Then finally reshuffle your deck. Each turn is divided up into 2 parts, and each player takes their whole turn before passing to the next player. The first part of your turn is the beginning phase, and in this phase you will first ready your cards. This means you turn any cards that were exerted from your last turn back upright. You would then check for any card effects that happen at the start of your turn, and then last step in this phase is to draw a card from your deck. If this is the first turn of the game, the first player will skip drawing a card. After you have completed the beginning phase, you move to the main phase. In the main phase, you can do any of these actions at any time. You can place a card from your hand face down in your Inkwell as long as it has the Inkwell symbol. You can play a card from your hand. You can use a character or item card ability. You can quest with a character, and you can challenge with a character. Now let's break each of these down further. Your Inkwell is where you'll put your ink cards face down. To do this, show the card to your opponent and then put it face down in front of you. Each card in your Inkwell represents one ink. Once you place a card face down in your Inkwell, nothing on the front matters. It's simply ink. You can only do this once during your turn. The only way to do this more is if a card effect lets you place a card in your Inkwell, like this Mickey Mouse. You'll use these cards in your Inkwell to pay the cost of cards you play from your hand, which brings us to playing a card from your hand. Playing a card just means taking it from your hand and putting it face up on the table. The ink cost in the hexagon is the amount of cards you must exert in your Inkwell to play that card. Exerting just means turning a card to its side to indicate you have used it for the turn. When you play a character card, put it on the table above your Inkwell. Characters interplay in the ready or non-exerted position, but you can't do anything with them until your next turn. When you play a character, you are drawing them, and their ink takes a turn to dry before they can do anything. When you play an item card, you will also pay its cost and place it on the table above your Inkwell. Unlike characters, you can use items right away. When you play an action card, you use its effect, then put the card into your discard pile. With songs, there's a special rule that gives you another way to pay for them. Each song says a character with cost X or more can exert to sing this song for free. If you have a character with the listed cost or higher, you can exert that character to play the card instead of exerting cards in your Inkwell to pay its ink cost. You cannot sing songs with a character that came into play the same turn you are playing a song as their ink is still drying. Next up is using abilities. Many items and characters have abilities you can use during your turn and only during your turn. If a card ability has a cost, that appears before its effect with the two separated by a dash. The cost might include an exert cost, an ink cost, text that explains the cost, or a combination of any of these. You must pay every part of an ability's cost in order to use the ability. Also remember, you cannot use the abilities of a character you played this turn. Your characters can also go on a quest. To do this, you exert them and gain lore equal to their lore value. Again, you cannot quest with a character the same turn you played them, as their ink is still drying. Your characters can also challenge an opposing character. To do this, you will exert one of your characters to send them into a challenge. Then choose an opponent's exerted character to challenge. You cannot challenge a readied character. Both characters in a challenge deal damage at the same time. Look at each character's strength and put that many damage counters on the other character. If at the end of that challenge any character has as many damage counters as they do willpower, they are banished and go face up to the discard pile. Damage counters stay on a character until an effect removes them or the character is banished. And this is how you play Disney Lorcana. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will try and answer everyone's questions. I hope you guys have a great time playing Disney Lorcana.